This is my first talk.
You're like sitting on a mountain of material.
I have not done a talk as calm as the new KPI at all. This is going to be my first one.
That is Susan Boles, a fractional CFO and COO working with small business owners and entrepreneurs. And I am Jay Acunzo, and this thing you're watching now is a public coaching call where I work with Susan to help her develop her signature keynote speech beat for beat. Today, it's a tricky problem. The natural way that we communicate when sharing big ideas rooted in our expertise, I'm talking methodologies, frameworks, even tactical advice. The natural way we communicate is actually the worst possible way to get others on board with our ideas or share expertise in a way that makes sense. Whether you're giving a speech, shooting a video, even recording a podcast, we have to consciously consider and practice a more effective way to educate other people, and that's what you're going to see put on display in my call with Susan. Susan has this impressive new visual framework to drive her entire platform forward, including her keynote speech, her content, even her service offerings that she sells. And she works with her clients to design a calmer, more resilient company each time as an expert in finance and operations. Her premise for that is to make calm your new KPI. If you want your business to be different, you have to solve for something different, make calm your new KPI. And so her framework is meant to show you the difference between what she calls a default business and a calmer company. So the stakes are high, the framework is crucial, but as always, what you know might matter, but what you say and how you say it determine whether or not they care.
So I've been using this premise for over a year now, I think. The actual talk here is, what if you made calm your new KPI? Instead of letting default decisions drive every action in your business, what if you deliberately designed your business for margin, sustainability, and purpose? Imagine if your business was designed to support you, to feel good, not just grow fast. Absolutely, you need profit margins to build a sustainable business. That's not negotiable. But here's the thing, that's only part of the picture. What you also need are margins that create space to breathe. And then I do actually talk about like financial margins, capacity margins, energetic margins. So that's actually in the talk track.
I am not seeing any problems so far.
As I do this, I am talking about the different kinds of margins. The end of this basically is, here's the catch. Margins aren't the default. If you want to build something different, something better, you can't just keep reacting to the noise. You have to stop following the default path and start intentionally designing for calm. And to do that, you have to make calm your new KPI. When you're trying to intentionally engineer calm into your business, there's 4 different levers you can focus on to intentionally move your business along the spectrum from default to calm, and we walk through each of the levers.
Okay, this is where we should focus. So up until this point, you've given me a really clear argument. I understand I'm leaning in, and also, in short order you're doing it because it's a shorter talk.
And so I'm like, it was really hard to compress this into 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do to it's easier to, if someone's like, Jay, fill time, I'm like, no, bro, I would put on this earth to do that. If they're like, can you cut? I can only do that now, like this many years into being a speaker. So it's hard to cut. When you share a methodology in a talk, it is one of, if not the most important pieces of it. It's like right up there with your opener, your closer, and a signature story. It's like, it's like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. They're all super important. D being the methodology or framework. Like those are all so important. Opener, closer, signature story, sharing the framework. Just like sharing the story, imagine that this was a slide summarizing a story, and you had every single screenshot of every single moment of the story with every single bullet point in text. It'd be super overwhelming. That's kind of how we share frameworks and methodologies in the business world in our talks, is we give it all at once. But instead, what I want you to try is to actually build the framework in front of them. Because while you're building it, they're getting spoon-fed each little piece they need to get it. And then even maybe a step before you reveal it, they get to the end and it clicks and it's so satisfying and they remember it and they can maybe even speak to it a little bit or use it, which is the goal, right? So what you want to do is pare this down to the intention behind it first, which is this slide. Make this graphic resemble the next slide, where like default and calmer need to be vertical on the left and the right, or you need to show this slide with nothing in the middle. First, grasp the transformation we want. So I'll give you an example in my work. I make the claim that more of us should be competing on the impact of our ideas, not the volume of our marketing. But most of our marketing and most of our content and most of our ideas are commodities. They're cheap. I can get it anywhere. You feel like you're on the hamster wheel trying to promote that stuff. It doesn't work very well. What if you compete on the impact of your ideas instead? Then I say the impact of an idea is proportional to its value and its originality. And we can visualize that on this matrix.
And that's when you're visualizing them.
So what you're doing is saying, we have all these problems. I think there's a solution. Make calm the new KPI. You've led me there well with the argument and the setup. Now you're like, and here's how to think about it. Remember this thing we're trying to explore. And you say, it's either the journey is from this to this, or we can define it like I set it up with this and this in mind. And just give me those terms with nothing filled in yet. And then piece by piece, help me make sense of it until it's all filled in.
Okay. So in this case, if I took this slide and basically left this part here, but moved these here, like to the edges, to kind of set up that companies exist on a spectrum from default to calmer, and that you can move your business intentionally from the default business to the calmer business.
Right. And exactly. So the first thing is like businesses exist on this spectrum from default, which you've done a nice job of setting up as something we want to avoid with the default decisions that we make, creating a default business. Like we want to move from here to calm, and businesses exist on a spectrum. But when it comes to building a business, there's tons of variables. I think there are 4 main ones. And you might not say variable, you might have a different way of phrasing this, right? But there are 4, this is actually comprised of 4 different spectra. And because there's different things you're doing, and you might fit different ways. And I'm not saying 100% of you has to be all the way over. I'm saying we have to calibrate. And here's how we calibrate, right? So consider there's 4 spectra. And so now the next click, you show 4 empty lines.
The empty lines.
Just the empty lines. Yep.
And then do
yes.
That
and
it's
now introduce the first one.
Management style.
Then introduce the second, talk about it. Then introduce the third, then introduce the fourth, and then help me navigate and move it around when you're like, look, and some people have this extreme default management style. They can still have a calm business because their values and their people are very calm. Their business design is very calm. Their use of efficiency is very calm, or whatever. You kind of give me a couple of permutations of it later. But I first have to grasp like the machinery. So it's first, what does the machinery do? Second, here are the parts of the machine and what each part does. Third, let's use it as a whole.
Okay, so if you were going through, so the original one is just default, just calmer, talk about the spectrum.
Yep.
Then when I'm talking about each line, would I talk about that this exists on a spectrum here, or I would just say, here are the 4 variables, and then go back and say, this is, this is on this spectrum, this is on this spectrum.
Yep. Yes, this is a great question. I'd put it to you. You could introduce all 4 if they won't feel overwhelmed and you don't use any jargon. So like my tendency is if I'm introducing a list of 4, short of me trying to use an open loop, like you want to know what the next one is and I haven't revealed it yet, that's a viable way to do it. If you want to reveal all of them at once, none of them can create questions in the audience's mind. Because if they're focused on, I don't understand what number 3 is, but now you're going back to number 1 to define it, I have to wait 5 minutes to get my question answered. I'm distracted. I'm not paying attention. I might be leaning out of the talk. So the question here is, if you were to quickly define all 4 of these, is it too much for me to hold in my head? Is there anything confusing or deserving of a definition that you don't get to right away? Or is it like, yeah, of course, these are 4 things I deal with every day as an entrepreneur?
Does something like, if I show you management style on a spectrum from authoritarian to autonomous, does that create questions, or do you kind of get that?
What I'm saying is if you gave me all 4 all at once, and I don't quite understand.
That I don't want to do them.
Right. So I would, if you don't want to give all 4 all at once, then start with the first one. And now what we're creating is 4 modules in both the slide design and the talk track, that it's the same structure to explain all four, right? So an example would be like, first reveal it on the framework, then go to a next slide where you're off the framework and you define what it means and you show me some examples and then you give me some prompts to consider my own. And then you go back to the framework and you're like, so that's management style. The next one, and you reveal the next one. Then you go back into the same modular structure. You're like, here's the definition, here's a few permutations, here's some prompts and questions for you to calibrate your own. And then so that's the second one. So what I'm looking for is, what do they need to hear? And how do you replicate that for all four?
But I do like having it visually, like just the first part, then just the second part, then just the third part, and then just the fourth part. Yeah. And talking through each one of those.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like, that's my problem with, I really like having a visual framework now. It works so much better than like an acronym.
Yeah.
But also, it's still new.
It's
kind of like it feels overwhelming when I just show it to you.
Totally. You just need to build it in view of me. And the building part is empowering because I understand it all and can start to apply it or even ask good questions about it if I don't fully get it, which is what you want too, people leaning in. But there's a secondary benefit, which is you sort of mitigate all the variables you are trying to hold in your head and therefore clarify to them all at once by just giving them spoonfuls because it's new to you to present it. So don't play it on hard mode. Like, do it a few different ways over time, or do it the way that your gut is telling you to do it now, which to me is where your gut is screaming, like, give them the management style spectrum first, define it, explain it a little bit, move on to the next one, define it, explain it a little bit. And then over time, and for longer talks, you start to show, okay, and those are the levers and you understand it all. And in general, you get some archetypical businesses, right? And here's one, and here's one, and here's one, and the levers are changing. And once I see the levers changing, almost like in real time, that's when it's going to really click in my head. Because now it's not just like a way of defining a bunch of terms. It's a way of me going out and seeing the world differently.
Yeah, I need them and I don't have them.
Like an archetype where management style and people are both incredibly calm. Business design is somewhere else. Use of efficiency is somewhere else. Like you could see it's so satisfying to start to use these tools and plot things on them. And I'm worried that you might skip the oomph factor of
so that is my
tool.
problem is I'm like, okay, cool, I have the tool, and also now I am not at the point where I've figured out what the personas are.
You have to understand, like, we're talking about the theory, but there's a very real talk you have to give to a very real audience and a very real tight runtime. So that's how I would lead people to that. I work with experts like Susan all the time, entrepreneurs, creators, authors, speakers, service providers, executives. It's really easy for us to share ideas in a way that feels kind of like a wall of smarts. We give too much too soon, and it's too dense because we are too close to it. Remember, we have been on a journey of understanding, and we have gone through our creative processes that they weren't a part of. So when we speak or when we record or when we teach anywhere, we have to kind of replicate the journey that they have yet to go on. Control the pacing, give them one piece at a time, spoon feed them the first thing, make sure they get it, then move on to the next. Don't give them everything all at once. And then think about structure. What is the flow of doing that? Think about your speed. Am I going too fast? Think about your impact. Can I communicate with greater power and not have to worry about my volume? Retrace the journey that you were on to learn something or create something and watch it suddenly click in their minds.